come on up here, guys. We'll just kind of half circle it right here. Perfect. Yeah. Come over here, Heaven, right here. You're across from me, and the rest of us. Yes, we did it. This is awesome. Carrie, get over here. All right, I'll move this. So we'll just do this, and we'll share the mics. So, man, we had an amazing time, and I know what you're thinking. Why wasn't I invited? Well, you were. You didn't show. You missed it. It was amazing. And we had an incredible time. Not only was it fun, but we really, God really worked in our lives in a cool way. And so I've just asked a few of them just to kind of share. We're going to have a conversation together, and you guys just get to listen in. Does that sound good? Okay. I want to start with Mariah. All right. Is your mic on? Let's do this. Boom.
Oh.
That one is on. All right. Perfect. Oh, Mariah, it was so cool watching God work in your life. Can you just tell us a little bit about what was going on in your life and how you came into the trip?
So I came into this trip really closed off. I was like really hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of anger and unforgiveness towards so many different people, not like different people and forgiveness, but just so much burden on my shoulder. I came into camp like, oh, I'm just gonna stay with my sister, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna stay closed-minded, and just mind my own business and not talk to anyone, not meet new friends, and obviously like worship God and pay attention when it's time, but let's just say God had a totally different plan because that's not what happened.
That's so awesome. Now, Jose, what did you come into the week? Where were you at?
I was at a very low point because before I went off to camp, I felt alone, sad, and I wasn't really planning on coming to camp, but on Thursday, the Thursday before camp, I went to the prayer night. I wasn't planning on going, but I decided to go last minute. And that's when Brock told me that I could go to camp without paying anything. So I just took the opportunity to go. And after camp, I just came back a different person. My parents say I came back different. My family says I came back different. Everything is different.
I love that. I love that. What did God do? So we're there. Shane, what did God do in your life when we were there? How did he work?
So basically, God worked in my life in a way to where I had tons of hope for me, and not just myself, but other people in the youth group.
So we're there, and you start feeling this sense of just hope rising up inside of you. All right, talk about that.
So basically, like in worship, like I just felt like this sense from God saying that like all of us have a purpose in our life, no matter what it is. And like all of us can fulfill that no matter what.
I love that. That's the voice of God right there. Because the enemy says the opposite. You have no purpose. There is no meaning. There is no hope. There is no tomorrow. Many of us have been burdened by that, and then all of a sudden, a young person who still has God-hearing ability speaks this truth to us, right? Heaven, talk to us a little bit about your experience.
So for me, it was just a very unexpected thing. I came to camp just because she was going and I wanted to learn how to surf, not really expecting a close connection and not really expecting what I actually got. I just came home and I could feel how I was different and how changed I was, how I was able to grow more than I was before.
And then Mia, you forced Heaven to come, which is good. I'm gonna pull you over this way. There, stand right there. All right, now talk. Get you in the camera. So you came in excited that you got your friend to come, and then what happened in your life?
So I think it was like Tuesday night where I was just worshiping regular stuff, and I could feel like a warmth, like I was welcomed, and it really shocked me. I was just like, what's going on? So I look around, and like there's people that are feeling the same thing. I could see on their faces, like God's touching their heart. They're working in their lives.
Right. So God just kind of showed up. And it was surprising for many, wasn't it? It was like, oh. Even to the point where students came up to me and they were like, I don't know, but I think God might be real. And there was this overwhelming sense. Let's talk to Luciana. Luciano, can you tell us kind of what God did in your life, even through some connections of new friends, but tell us what God did.
So before camp, I just had my close circle of friends, and I was going there thinking that I was just going to stick with them the whole time. But then to the people I thought I wouldn't be friends with, I got really close to them, and we've been hanging out frequently.
And to me, that is so significant. That's not little, because this is a communal faith. And so many times we feel so isolated and alone. And then Ephesians talks about how God brings us into this deep-spirited friendship. And that's what we get to experience together. Let's go to my main man, once known as Sam, now known as Rick. We had a name change day one, wasn't it? Day one. We had a couple Sams, and he's like, guys, there's too many Sams here. Call me Rick. How awesome is that? So tell us a little bit about your experience.
Well, before I went to camp, I was really kind of like the outsider of the whole youth group kind of thing. And before camp, I really had hope as to make friends and to get closer to God. And during that whole time, it succeeded, and I did make friends and got closer to God.
Yeah. And it was so cool watching you. It felt like you emerged. All of a sudden, it's like, there he is. It was awesome. Let me go back to Mariah. How do you feel like your life, because you shared at the beginning kind of what you came in feeling. I'm not going to connect. I'm just going to be to myself. What happened?
So me and my sister ended up separating houses, and I freaked out. But little did I know, that was the best thing that happened. I was able to make new friends. I was able to be me and explore myself and not just like be just sat down and just closed off. And within that time, I was like opening my hands to God, and I felt like a burden like get released, and I just felt a sudden peace and joy, and like I could not stop smiling at camp. Like even right now, like I felt like I should be nervous right now, and I'm just like, hi, but
You're meant for the stage. Now,
it's just like,
what you came in with this sense of like heaviness and unforgiveness, like just from some hurt that has happened in your life, especially in the last year.
yeah.
And so, how did what did God do to kind of set you free in that?
Well, like I always thought, okay, if God can forgive us, why can't we forgive other people? And like once I came back to God, I kind of felt that conviction, like why can't I just have this sense of peace for myself and be desperate enough for this peace and joy to forgive other people, not only for them, but for myself.
I love that. Desperation is a good thing, right?
Yes.
Okay, last one. Carrie, step into the camera view. So Carrie came, and all year, you got to understand, we have this growing youth group, and she has been providing meals every Wednesday night all year long, first for like 5 kids and then for like 60 kids, and it's just been insane. how she has blessed us and served us. And then also, oh yeah, let's run Alpha and Rooted, and she's so like leading those programs of our church. But you coming this week, what did you observe?
So for me, I was there just so that the leaders could hang out with the kids. And for me, the first day of program, the kids were just kind of like, okay, camp. By the second day, you could see friendships forming and a posture during worship from this to this to this to this. And if you've never been around youth, because I have been around youth for a long time on the outskirts, to see a depth of longing to be with Jesus and a longing for deep friendship. I was moved to tears to see youth who I've been praying for, some for years, some for just weeks, some for months, come to just, really adore being with Jesus. And when I would ask them at the last day I said, what was your favorite part? And they said, worship. I said, man, you have no idea. Adults have a hard time with worship. So it's super encouraging and convicting to be around youth who are catching the fire of Jesus. So
I love it. Can we give these folks a hand? How amazing is that? Thank you, guys. You can go back to your seats. Thank you. Awesome. I have been doing this. I know I look young and strong, attractive. I know. I've been doing youth work for 30 years. Can you believe it? That is why my hair is leaving, turning white by the moment. I'm grayer now than I was when I first got on the stage this morning. Would you like to be a youth leader? I've had the privilege of speaking at camps. I speak at a lot of middle school and high school. I speak at colleges and universities, at these retreats and conferences. And I was telling people this earlier, that typically at the end of a retreat or a camp, someone will get up and say, all right, this has been an amazing week. We've had an incredible time living up here in this kind of unreal world, but now we're getting ready to go back home. We're getting ready to go back to reality. And I always I hear this consistently, and I always want to get up on the stage and go, wrong. What that person just said is not true. I've always wanted to just rudely interrupt and be like, wrong. Because this week has been the real world. This has been a reality where the divisions between all of us have slowly started to dissipate, where we feel free to kind of be ourselves, to open up our lives to each other, to share our hearts and our stories with one another, where we're raising our hands in worship without fear of judgment. We're opening the scriptures, and we're not only reading the scriptures, but we're allowing the scriptures to read us. This has been the real world. This has been reality. We're getting ready to go back to an illusion. But back we go. So how do we take what God has done in our lives back to this? Back to the everyday. See, the gospel changes us. I'm going to mess with this because I feel like the mic is sounding weird. Am I right? I'm wrong. Okay. The gospel isn't just something that you just kind of intellectually go, okay, I agree with those set of things. The gospel is an upside down world It's an upside down, backward kingdom that invites you in to play a significant role. It calls you to be a part of this new humanity that is bringing heaven into every room that you walk into, representing this reign, representing and extending the reign of Jesus into every relationship that you have. That's the gospel, and it changes our daily. It changes our everyday, the way we think, the jobs, our tasks, our profession, the spouses we choose, how we choose to raise our kids, what we do at school. The gospel changes everything. And these students are entering into this brave new world, and as a church, we get to kind of walk and journey with them of what it means to live this thing out. What an honor, right? What a privilege. I want to tell you one story this morning, and then the band will come up and close us in worship. I want to tell you a story of another teenager. His name is John Mark. John Mark was born at the heart of the early church movement. First century, he's there as a little boy seeing the ministry of Jesus. His home is like home base for the first church, the first congregation, the first gatherings of these people who are believing this resurrection life that Jesus is promising. He sees Jesus killed. He sees Jesus comes back to life. He sees Jesus teach over 1,000 people for about a month, 40 days. He's this kid. And he grows, and he's so exciting, right? But he's a rich kid. He's spoiled. He's born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Everything has been easy for him. I mean, his home is massive. His parents are wealthy. And so he hasn't really grown in character. And you see this throughout the scriptures. There's just, his story is just little snippets of his story throughout. You'll see him in Acts. You'll see him in much of Paul's writings, just little snippets of his story that we can kind of piece together. And it's amazing. And then also the early church fathers talk about him because he becomes a legend. Well, at any rate, Paul the Apostle and John Mark's cousin Barnabas are these legendary missionaries. They're the heroes. And Paul invites John Mark, dude, you want to go on a mission trip with us? John Mark is this kid. He's like, woo, yes. And he's bragging to his friends, I'm going to be traveling with Paul. We're going to change the world, right? He's so excited. He goes traveling with them. And what we discover is that they encounter difficulty. And John Mark doesn't have what it takes. You ever been at camp? Were you a kid at camp who got sent home early? Anyone? Thank you. I'm with you, my brother. I got sent home early once. It's humiliating. John Mark doesn't have what it takes. In fact, Paul looks at John Mark, this kid, this spoiled brat, and says he is useless. John Mark gets kicked off the mission trip with his tail between his legs. He's humiliated. He goes back to Jerusalem, to his home, and he wants to just hide in his room. Jose talked about, he was sharing this morning when we were talking about our testimonies, how he has felt like he's just wanted to hide in his room. But God is working in his life, and it's like he's coming, like God is drawing me to himself out away from isolation. John Mark is now hiding. The story goes that Peter, who knows failure, is like, I got to go get John Mark. Peter, Petros, the rock, the one who Jesus looked at earlier, a few years earlier, and said, get behind me, Satan. Peter, he knows failure. The one who denied even knowing Jesus 3 times. Peter goes, oh, I know what John Mark is feeling. He goes and gets John Mark, and he says, "Won't you travel with me?" He pursues the broken heart of John Mark and says, "Come travel with me and just take notes of my sermons." So John Mark is following Peter to every small village, every city, every place there in the Middle East, to Rome. He's going everywhere with Peter, and you can see him with his pad of paper and his pen, and he's writing down these amazing stories of Jesus and these words and teachings of Jesus, and they start changing him. The gospel starts changing John Mark from the inside out. He's hearing Peter say that if you want to be great, you got to be at the bottom. If you want to be a leader, you got to be a servant to all. Peter is teaching this upside down, backwards world. If you want to be first, you got to be last. And this starts changing John Mark, this kid. He takes and he gathers all of his notes from Peter's sermons, and that's how we have the book of Mark, written by a kid who people thought was useless. How rad is that? The gospel changes lives. It's changed my life. It's changing us as a community. This is what the gospel does. Years later, Paul, the one who called John Mark useless, writes from a prison in Rome. And he says this, look at this passage. He says, "Only Luke is with me. Can you get Mark?" Man, it moves me because I see kids' lives changed every week for 30 years. Bring him with you because he is helpful to me in my ministry. That Greek word means useful. Once useless, now useful. Once in the way, now helpful. Bring him to me. John Mark ends up being the first person to bring the gospel to Africa. Stud. These are the heroes. The gospel changes our stories. No matter where you are in the midst of your story, some hopeless, some of us feeling helpless, some of us feeling useless. The gospel changes everything. I want to bring up two things that Peter did that could challenge us. His example could change the way we see our students. And the first is this. Peter looked at John Mark and he showed him grace. Grace. Not judgment, not discipline. He doesn't withdraw from him. No passive aggressiveness. Grace. There's this passage in Titus that says this: "For the grace of God has appeared to all people. It teaches us to say no to ungodliness and worldly passions and to live self-controlled, upright, and godly lives in this present age." This is the upside down, backwards good news of the gospel. My anger won't change you, but my grace will. My aggressiveness, my withdrawing from you, my passivity, whatever it is, I don't like what you're doing. So I withdraw from you. I pull away from you. That doesn't change us. God comes near in his grace. Grace changes us. True grace. Amazing grace. That's what changes. That's what changes us. Peter comes to John Mark with grace. Dude, I've been where you've been. I know where you are. You were called useless. I was called Satan. I got you. Follow me, and I'll show you how to follow Jesus. Grace. Second thing he does, Peter invites John Mark to join him in this brand new way of living. And this changes John Mark. John Mark starts living this beautiful rebellion out in the midst of a culture that is dead set against God. And here's the truth. God wants to work in each one of our lives. And that's what this morning is all about. That's the deal. God brought you here. It was no mistake. We had kids who said they couldn't come to camp. God wanted them there. God brought you here this morning. God is moving. He is good. And no matter where you are in the midst of your story, He is for you. His good news is better news than you ever dreamed of. And His grace can change you. What I'm going to do is I'm going to invite the band back up. And then I'd also like to invite our prayer teams to the front. And we would like to close this morning with a couple songs of worship. And then also we would love to pray for you. Now here's the cool thing about this morning. We have some kids up here who would like to pray for you. Have you ever been prayed for by a kid? It's insane. It's way better than getting prayed for by an adult. Because they have this audacious faith. I'm in London 12, 13 years ago. I walked to the front of the stage. There's probably 3,000 people in this room. I walked to the front of the stage to get prayed for. And this lady says, go pray with that guy right there. I look, it's a 15-year-old British kid. And I'm standing there. And this kid, he looks at me and he goes, oh, God just told me that you really love kids. You really love teenagers. Are you called to give your life away to teenagers? I'm like, yes. He's like, God just told me that He wanted me to pray for you. He set this thing up. And He just prayed over me. Honestly, my life has never been the same. We're going to pray for you this morning in the midst of worship. Come up front. Let us pray for you.